At the time that Scully showed up, we didn't see that type of female represented very much at all out in the world of television, which is what we look to more and more as examples of who we are and to help make sense of us as human beings.
What I find fantastic is any notion that there are answers beyond the realm of science. The answers are there. You just have to know where to look.
That's why they put the I in FBI.
And so to suddenly have an appealing, intelligent, strong-minded female who was appreciated by her pretty cool male co-worker.
Anyway, you could use my help.
Always.
Was an awesome thing to behold. And I think that a lot of young women said, that's me. I'm interested in that. I want to do that. I want to be that. I've met a lot of women in law enforcement. I've met FBI agents. I've met doctors in Comic-Con situations.
I know that the character of Dana Scully was a physics major and inspired me to major in physics and go through and get my PhD, and thank you. And I wanted to know if this is something you've heard a lot.
I think there was something called the Scully effect. Just a huge amount more women who were getting into the sciences around when the X-Files was on than they had experienced before. Do you know about that, Chris? Yeah.
From my point of view, men often come up to me and say that they got into Scully because Mulder was in it.
For me, the sexiest thing is intelligence, and that's what I think women are drawn to with Scully.
Explain how they're doing it.
I can't explain it, but if you eliminate the impossible, whatever is remaining, even if improbable, must be the truth.
No sugar, Sherlock.
When you start to see female characters who don't play into caricatures and what their position is with a man in the same scene, it's like, no, they're both equal. They're both human beings.
Scully's never the second character. When I would write it, even though it was just on paper and nobody's really going to see it except for the people working on it, that I had as many Scully and Mulders as I did Mulder and Scullys, to make clear that Scully came first too. It wasn't the S on the chest, but you know, it was that she had an equal seat at the table, and I think that's all any woman in any business is asking for.
March 28, 1969, any president die that day?
Eisenhower.
Who needs Google when you got Scully?
Well, JFK was the 35th president. Eisenhower was the 34th president.
He's just showing off.
Scully is not only intelligent, but she's capable. She can take care of herself. She can kick ass.
Go!
Throw this table.
I've killed him.
25 years ago, there were very few roles for strong women to do action. For me, it's just been rewarding to see that evolution. Fire! Women are a force now.
Media is one of our most powerful tools to influence pop culture. And if we really want to eradicate unconscious bias, women have as much unconscious bias as men. It's really important that we use a gender lens when we're thinking about stories that we tell.
Look, I've had my fair share of outrageous conspiracy theories, okay? So cut the mystery crap and get to the science.
For us, data and research has been the magic bullet because it allows people to make informed decisions versus emotions. When they hear the facts, they can really embrace it. And what we have found is that because of the character of Scully, women and girls have been pursuing forensic science degrees for college careers.
Electrocution affects electrolytic conduction.
I first became aware of this phenomenon during the 5th season of The X-Files, where I was teaching 500 introduction to biology students, and so I decided to test the Scully effect for myself. I asked my class, how many of you were influenced by watching Dana Scully on The X-Files? And over half of the hands in the class went up.
I have met so many incredible scientists through the work that I do. What's incredible is the consistency with which they cite Scully as an inspiration. One of the most incredible experiences I had was going to the Science March in DC, which I went to with Ann Simon, who's the longtime science advisor on the show. She's a virologist. And through her, I then met all of these women who had become real-life Scullys, and I had a placard with Scully at the microscope. In that crowd of however many thousands of scientists, I had so many women who came up to me to point at my sign and go, Scully is why I'm a scientist. I love Scully.
Oh, it's you.
It's not a problem, is it?
The influence that Dana Scully played in my life was like super important to me. I mean, I grew up with a lot of female influences, but not anyone who's really in the hard sciences.
You're a medical doctor?
You sound surprised.
I don't know. I guess maybe I am.
Why?
You know, women are socialized to defer and be polite. And Scully was always polite, but she was also firm and she stood her ground. And to see somebody on screen who was dealing in a world of men and standing up when she felt like it was the time to stand up to people was really influential in me growing up with a backbone and dealing with misogyny and patriarchy.
Look, I'm not being sexist here. I'm just being honest.
Where would you like the autopsy report sent?
Storytellers write what they love or what they know. And we have found historically that it's been about a 5-to-1 ratio of men to women behind the camera. And in our research, our domestic research and our global film research, we found that when there has been the presence of a female writer or director, we've seen an increase of female characters on screen by 10%.
It's a little different, but it's 2 lines. Say the lines for me. Reditete manus exquibus vidus desadet fetus!
I don't think that having a strong female character is restricted to women writing them, but I think it's just easy and natural and obvious. There have been a lot of great white male hero stories, and I'm not knocking them. I've seen a lot of them, and so...
They were good.
And they were good. I don't have anything against them. I'm not saying they can't all exist in the same place, but I'm interested in the story that I haven't seen before, and female stories are just less told.
I want to believe. What else does Scully want to do?
She doesn't want to believe.
I was really impressed with Gillian for standing up for women in the film industry, because any voice that we can have to bring attention to that, I think, is really important. Women have to start standing up for each other and supporting each other so that we can start being more represented behind the camera and in front.
It's really Frankenstein.
It was difficult for me to read the amount of attention that was being brought to the present moment when it was an historical thing. And this is a fact. In 201 episodes, there were a small handful of female writers and 2 female directors.
3 now with me, 4 now with Holly, right? Gillian, I don't think my deal was done. I think that's why I hadn't told her that I had been hired. But I had been hired before that was tweeted. And of course, I want to give her props for, you know, sticking up for women and naming me by name. You should hire Carol Banker. But also I have to give props to Gabe because he's been pushing for me to direct for forever. And Chris, who gave me my first directing job on The Lone Gunman years ago and is the one who hired me this time.
Robert, take a step to your left, please.
So in the instance of me being hired, I give credit to a lot of people for that happening. And in fact, Gillian texted me and said, "What do you think about the hoopla?" And I'm like, "What hoopla?" I didn't even know that it happened.
Let's just do these inserty things, so if we can see the address, that would be great.
That's the first time that I've worked with Carol as a director. And since the series ended, way back when, Carol and I have actually become really good friends. She's one of my closest friends. And so it was both a wonderful experience to have a woman directing the X-Files, but also to see that side of her, you know, which I've never had the opportunity to see, even from afar.
What's that?
Desiccated human hair. I mean, she was probably the most prepared director, the level of her attention to detail and her perfectionism. Part of that is, as a woman director, you know, the expectation is so much greater because one has had to really fight for work and to prove oneself. And so often, I think women are more prepared than men in general, just because if they choose to fly by the seat of their pants or figure it all out later, the degree of judgment and expectation about that, I think, is different.
Yeah, that was great. You're talking about the Ginger Rogers thing. Having to do the same thing but backwards in high heels, right? I'm held to a different standard. If I fuck up a little bit, it's a much bigger fuck up. Whether that exists or not, I would argue that it probably does exist, not across the board, but my bigger thing, and Honestly, to be a good director, which I hope I am, you just can't give a shit about anything except making a great episode. And I come very prepared because I operate better that way. All the good directors I know also come in very prepared. They come in an hour early, they try and think ahead of anything that is potentially an obstacle and nip it in the bud. And I don't come super prepared because I'm a woman or because I'm worried about what people will think of me. I just do because it's a hard job. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for hanging around for that.
Literally.
I enjoy a challenge, and I like to be challenged. And I don't want to do it because it's easy. Stunts and action has traditionally been a very male-dominated thing. Women were only stunt doubles, and that was it. And even before my generation, men used to be the stunt doubles for women. There were no stunt women. For me personally, I didn't sit around and wait for the phone to ring. I didn't whine that, oh, I'm not getting as many opportunities as the men are. I just went, okay, well, how am I going to go make this happen? How am I going to get people, producers, studios to take me seriously as a stunt coordinator? That I can take care of their cast, I can take care of the set, and I can make the action dynamic.
And then Mulder says, Scully, and then boom, you come in. Cool. You're stepping over with your right foot.
And I think for the younger generation or somebody who wants to do this, whether it be a director or a director of photography or a visual effects supervisor or dominantly male roles, you can do anything you set your mind to. And don't let anybody tell you can't, because they don't know you. They don't know what's in your mind and heart and how much passion you have for something. You just have to believe in yourself.
I think the biases can be unconscious and the need for change has to be conscious, but I do think it's changing.
And action.
I don't know if there's a world where everything is totally equal in any industry, but I think that certainly having women in the writer's room and having women behind the camera and having roles for women who are over 50, that is the way that we show the truth of what's really going on in the world.
I left behind a career in medicine to become an FBI agent because I believed in this country. I still believe in this country, but I believe there are powerful men in the government who do not. Men who have no respect for the law and who flout it with impunity.
This is not a soapbox, Miss Scully.
My favorite moment of Scully is where Scully is brought into Congress. She has this fierce belief that the institutions that she serves as a public servant, that those institutions are meant to protect people. You know, it might seem to be very square. I've heard that term used about Scully at times, but I find it to be the most inspiring aspect of her. We do see her consistently throughout the series as somebody who believes in the system of justice that we have in this country. So for me, that moment when she looks straight into the eye of this congressional panel and demand that they do the right thing, and then she's shuffled off into contempt of Congress and locked up for the night. And we see this shot of her through the window of her cell where she's very defiantly standing tall and strong and straight-backed. I treasure that image in the world that we're living in right now. Her research and her commitment to digging up truth is a really important example at this time when we're presented with things like fake news and alternative facts.
He's a congressman we're talking about, Agent Scully.
I know that, sir. And it is my natural inclination to believe that they are acting in the best interest of the truth. But I am not inclined to follow my own judgment in this case.
I thought, you know, what has been more profound about the Scully effect in my life? Ultimately, it was to know that the ways in which these deep and dark and maybe not so mysterious forces try to obstruct truth or try to obstruct fact, that science prevails. It always does. When I was in high school, I had this quote on a piece of paper in my locker. It has since come back to me endless times. It's when she says, "Nothing happens in contradiction to nature.
Only in contradiction to what we know of it. And that's a place to start. That's where the hope is."
Scientific discovery in and of itself is a place where you can find hope and where I always have.
Do you believe the universe is reducible to a single equation?
No.
The iconic figure of Scully as excavator of truth. And Gillian has this strong, quiet force. It's part Gillian, part Scully. I'm sure they coagulated over the years. Oddly enough, It's sort of unsung. Before there was a movement to do it or a call for it, Chris created it and Gillian was doing it ahead of its time.
You are not gonna steal my sunshine. No, you're not.
I think the doors are opening. Women must step up because the world needs us. I really, really believe that. And it's not at the exclusion of men. We need to just communicate creatively together. And now I think it's a great time for all of us to do that.
The combination of Chris's creation and whatever rookie, naive, terrified, determined will I brought to the table manifested a young woman yet to be depicted on TV. And as the fan response would soon prove, a desperately needed role model for women of all ages, everywhere.